Have a tooth locked in your jaw and you need to try to reposition it into where it's supposed to be? Hi, my name is Dr. Daniel Choi here at North Texas Dental Surgery. I have a really important video today talking about impacted canines. Now, this is something that's actually more common than not. And what happens is that in a lot of cases, people may be born with their canines or other teeth not properly positioned in where they're supposed to be. So let's take a specific example of this 12-year-old patient that saw me 2 years ago. So the orthodontist referred this case to me because her lower right canine was normally supposed to be positioned here, but unfortunately it's impacted and it's stuck down here. Now, what I can do is I can give you a close-up of exactly what that tooth looks like in cross-section. So if we were to look at it from a side view, so if I'm looking at this from the side, this is what we call a sagittal section. This is where her tongue would be, her upper tooth, lower tooth. This is the canine that's impacted from a side view. Again, this is her lower lip, this is her upper lip. Now, this is the positioning of where this canine tooth is. It's a little bit on the outer edge, right underneath the lip. What we were trying to do is we're trying to get in there, put a bracket on here, and swing that tooth into position. Now, it sounds great and it sounds easy in principle, but a lot of times these can be pretty complicated and can have some complications. So what types of complications are we talking about? Well, number one, if you don't get this done at a young age, chances are that it might not even be possible to even swing it into the position. And this procedure, again, is called a canine exposure. If you get older and your bone gets more dense, it becomes more difficult to try to do a radical movement and swing it into position. Now, another potential complication that I say right off the bat that patients could see is that if this tooth is not in a proper position and the path of which where it needs to try to swing into position is not a friendly position is what I'll call it, or a position where it's not going to be obstructed. What can happen sometimes is if we try to swing it into motion, into its position, and it's brushing up against the roots of other existing teeth, the body can basically start causing a resorption process where it's going to start destroying the roots of the healthy teeth next door. So that in essence becomes very catastrophic because now you had one tooth that was missing, but now you can basically end up resulting in the extractions of several other healthy teeth. That's another major consideration that needs to be taken into place. So when this patient came in 2 years ago at the age of 12, what we did was we were able to go in there and we were able to put that little bracket on here, and the orthodontist was going to then try to start positioning into place. Unfortunately, what ended up happening for this patient though was that the orthodontist was not able to swing it into its position, and the tooth was deemed ankylosed. Well, the tooth was actually, from what I recall from the surgery 2 years ago, the tooth was pretty mobile, but what ended up happening was just the sheer positioning of where it was in relationship to the root. Unfortunately, there was no other alternative other than to extract the tooth. So the patient actually came in this morning, and what we did was we were able to remove that tooth for her. But I want to take one step back. I want to show you basically what her canine exposure looked like. So yeah, this was here. This was her about 6 months ago, and you could still see that this tooth was locked in the same position with the little bracket attached. So what the orthodontist requested about several months ago was they said, hey, we're not having any luck trying to move this tooth. Let's just try to get it out, right? So this morning, what we did was we sedated her. We went in underneath the gums, had to remove a little bit of bone, and we were able to extract this tooth for her. Now, what options does she have? Well, she's only 14 years old, so she can't get an implant until she's done growing. So what we would ideally be doing is we had to look at basically options for her to be getting dental implants maybe between the age of 18 and 20. Realistically, she's going to be finishing her ortho soon, but she'll have to stay in a retainer. They're going to try to keep that space open so that we're going to have a spot so that we can place an implant there in the future. I created this video because I wanted to make sure that patients fully understood that anytime that you have an impacted canine, that it may not be possible all the time to actually swing it into position. Now, I want to give you one other example. We just had another patient that came in for a consultation not 15 minutes ago that was referred for actual extraction of her canines. So let me show you that one. So here's another example of a patient who's 16 years old. She has an impacted canine here. So it's actually buried underneath her gums in her jawbone. What she has is a little baby canine here. She has her central incisor, lateral incisor, and then her real canine is actually hidden. So this orthodontist actually referred her for extraction of this canine. So he basically had looked at the 3D scans and knew that the path that the tooth was on was going to be impossible for them to be able to swing this tooth into place without damaging any of the adjacent roots. So her orthodontist actually did a great job of kind of scouting this out and saying, hey, we're not going to try to risk damaging the adjacent teeth. Now, I gave you two recent examples in regards to, like, one may think that if you may need a canine exposure, that more often than not, that it's not going to happen. But That's not necessarily the case. In fact, the majority of cases when we do canine exposures, we are going to be able to take that canine that's locked into position and move it to where it needs to be. I just want patients to be aware of the fact that sometimes it might not be possible, either because of major factors such as resorption and damaging the roots of the adjacent teeth, or again, if you get this done at an older age, maybe your bone's gonna be too dense, so it's gonna be very difficult to kind of swing the teeth into place. So the best way to really answer that question as to whether this is gonna be able to happen or not is typically the surgeons that perform these procedures are gonna be your oral surgeons and periodontists. Your oral surgeon and periodontist or your orthodontist are going to have to collaborate based off your 3D scan, and they're gonna have to make a decision as to whether your tooth is going to have a good prognosis if they can swing it into place. I hope you guys will find this information helpful. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave any questions in the comments below. Thank you.